Well, good morning. Welcome to the first meeting of the General Government Subcommittee, Appropriations. I am Marcus Wiedauer. Thank you guys for being here early on a Friday morning so everybody can get home and on with their weekends. We're going to start. I'm going to call on my brother, Representative Prince, for a word of prayer.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we thank you for this day. Father, we thank you for this opportunity to do the business of this great state of Georgia. Father, we ask that everything we do be pleasing unto you. Give us your guidance, your strength, but most of all, your Son, Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for that. We're going to start with, let's do some introductions if that's all right. If you guys will hit your buttons so I can see which mics we're lining up with, and we'll start down here with Representative Stoner.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Glad to be here, even on this Friday morning at 9 a.m. For those who may not know me, this is not my first rodeo. I originally was elected in the House back in 2002. Actually served with Don. Of course, Don served with everybody, right, Don? And went to the Senate in 2004, served there for 8 years, and left in 2012. And someone asked me the other day, am I a rerun or a retread? And I said, no, I have voluntarily recommitted myself to the asylum. So I've come back here in 2022. So look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, and getting back in the groove.
Well, we appreciate you being on the right side of the building. So, Representative Yerda.
Good morning. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Happy to be here. I'm Bill Yerda from District 152. Down in southwest Georgia, I serve Worth, Lee, and a portion of Daugherty County, and I'm excited about serving on this committee, Mr. Chairman.
I appreciate you.
Good morning. I'm Don Parsons, and I represent House District 44, which is made up, I think, about 2/3 of northeast Cobb County, or North Cobb County, really north central Cobb County. And then the other third of it is southeast Cherokee County, which ends up being mostly Woodstock, the city of Woodstock. And I'm just happy to be here. Appreciate everybody being here with us today. Thank you.
Representative Prince.
Good morning. I'm Brian Prince. I'm out of Augusta, Georgia, but I have parts of Richmond County, which is Augusta, but also have Jefferson County, Rains, Louisville, those types of areas. So I have metro and rural area. This is my, I think, about my 4th year serving on this committee, and look forward to serving with you, Mr. Leader.
Appreciate that. I will also mention, I think most of you probably know that committee assignments came out maybe at about 5 o'clock last night. So Representative Matthew Gamble will also be joining us in the future. Representative Billy Mitchell, as well as Chairman Lynn Smith. I don't want to go any further without talking about David Hartman here for a minute. Everybody knows, and everybody in this room probably knows, this guy works harder on lots of things, but certainly this portion of the budget than any of us, and we really appreciate his efforts and everything that he's done for us. We'll go on. Oh, well, Billy? We can start. All right, brother. All right, we're gonna start with DNR. If the commissioner would like to join us up here at the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's great to be back in front of you. I'm Mark Williams, Commissioner of the Department of Natural Resources. And first off, as I did yesterday, I'd like to thank Governor Kemp and the legislature for your leadership in ensuring that our state's fiscal health, that we have a state with great fiscal health. DNR is stronger than ever, in large part thanks to all of you.
May I real quick, sorry to interrupt you, Commissioner, for us up here, we're page 11. Section 34 when he gets into it.
Well, you stole my thunder, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, well, there you go. All right. Well, I heard a lot of rustling papers up here. I was just a little worried.
But as the chairman said, our AFY 23 budget can be found on pages 11 and 12 of the tracking sheet. And we only have one addition, and it's in our law enforcement division on 34.6.1. So $4,195,000 has been added for equipment and installation costs associated with the new statewide public safety radio network. Across the state, there are as many as 9 independent radio systems being used by state, city, and county law enforcement agencies, which makes coordination in emergency situations nearly impossible. Once implemented, this system will address that issue by allowing seamless communication between our DNR game wardens, Georgia State Patrol, and local law enforcement. So that is our portion of a much larger statewide contract. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, that's our only addition. I would note that the Georgia Outdoor Stewardship trustees have met. They have voted on their slate of projects, and I have to present those to my DNR board by statute next Friday. After they vote that slate of projects out, that slate will be coming to this committee, so we will be getting with you, Mr. Chairman, a week from next Monday. Thank you. And that concludes my presentation, unless there are any questions.
Sounds good. Y'all, I think that's pretty simple, but if you guys have any questions, I'll open it up. Seeing none, I think you're probably heading south.
Yes, sir. Thank you,
All
sir.
right.
See those grandbabies.
All right. All right, we're going to move on to DOAS. If the commissioner will join us.
Good morning. My name is Rebecca Sullivan, and I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Administrative Services. It's good to be here today. Thank you all for your service in the General Assembly, all of your work on the budget, and particularly the general government section of the budget, which is the most important part of the budget. I'll be brief. The governor's recommendations for DOAS and the amended FY23 are on pages 3 and 4 of your tracking sheet in section 12. There were two changes made to our amended FY23 budget. The first change is reflected in several lines. It pertains to the elimination of the state general funds provided for the $5,000 COLA and all DOAS programs. So that's all one change, but it's reflected in 6 different lines: 12.3.1, 0.4.1, 0.5.1, 0.6.2, 0.7.1, and 12.8.1. So this change reflects the fact that DOAS is funded through revenues generated through our support services to state agencies, and we do not generally receive a direct appropriation for personal services. So therefore, we've been instructed to manage the cost of the COLA within our existing business model. The second change is to the risk management program, which is reflected in line 12.6.1. This is an increase in funding to meet the costs of the excess insurance and projected claim expenses for the property insurance program, and that's in the amount of $4.671319 million. And I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, I'll open it up. We have one chiming in here, Representative Prince.
Hey, good morning, Commissioner.
Good morning.
Listen, just with the elimination of the cost of living piece, you say you basically have to take that from within. Is that sort of how that works? And if that's the case, how is that going to affect your budget? I mean,
Yes, sir. That is the recommendation. And we did not draw those funds down for FY23. Of course, they were not available to draw down. So we have absorbed that cost within our existing programs through reserves generated through lapse of personal services. We're able to absorb that cost through FY24 at this point. Thank you for asking the question.
Anyone else? Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just looking at this. I kind of forgot how this works with DOAS, but I think this is what you just said. So on the tracking sheet, it shows the state funds been $65 million, total funds $292 million. So you were saying that a lot of that is coming as revenue somehow through the agencies or through the various agencies that y'all service. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. It depends on the program, how we're funded for each program, but the Human Resources Administration Division and the Risk Management Services are funded through assessments made to agencies that we support.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other questions for the commissioner? All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate your support.
All right. We're going to move on now to GTA. If someone is here.
Good morning, Chairman and committee members. I am Shawnzia Thomas, and I am honored to serve as your state CIO and the Executive Director for GTA. On your tracking sheet on page 4, line 12.12, you will see $3.5 million appropriated to GTA's Technology Empowerment Fund to increase funds to modernize the teacher certification and ethics application for the Georgia Professional Standards Commission to improve efficiency, security, and customer service. And before I invite Georgia Professional Standards Commission to talk about the project, I would like to touch on the Technology Empowerment Fund.
May I real quick, will you pull that microphone just a little bit closer to you so make sure everybody can hear you?
Okay, thank you. Oversight provided through the Technology Empowerment Fund helps to ensure that critical IT projects are completed on time and on budget. GTA also provides agencies with technical oversight and expertise to help ensure the success of all projects. This appropriation is solely for the Georgia Professional Standards Commission. None of the money goes to GTA. As the authority, funds allocated to the Technology Empowerment Fund are not required to be spent by the end of the fiscal year. As many large IT projects, the financial expense can be great, and the time to complete these projects can span over multiple years. Funds such as this allows the state to appropriate lump sums without necessarily contributing annually. That doesn't mean there's not any oversight. If we go to the next slide, you'll see committee members. I think back up on camera. You'll see committee members of the Oversight Committee, and we meet with this team quarterly to make sure that we provide financial oversight and accountability. I want to thank you for your time, and now I would like the Georgia Professional Standards Commission to talk about the project.
Good morning. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Christina Strode. I'm the Director of Management and Business Operations for the Georgia Professional Standards Commission. So this is not our usual subcommittee. We're usually in education. We're the agency that's over the preparation, certification, and ethical conduct of educators. The $3.5 million that Director Thomas spoke about a second ago is much appreciated funding that would allow us to replace, and thank you, to replace a 25 plus year legacy system that supports just about everything we do in certification and ethics. So this system has reached its limits. It's cumbersome to operate and update. It consumes unnecessary staff time, and it does not meet customer expectations. Next slide, please. A new system will give us flexibility, efficiency, and the ability to innovate that we need to serve our customers. And our customers are the educator preparation providers in the state, it's the educators in our state, and it's the school systems of our state. And to serve them well, while enhancing security of their data, and it will make a world of difference for our agency. That's all I have, and want to thank you for your time, and we're happy to answer any questions that we can.
Thank you. We're going to go with I believe Representative Stoner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Quick question, what is the timeline in the sense of rolling out and implementing all this new technology?
We've been working with GTA during the fall on the business processes to document all of that. And it depends on what we end up doing. We're in discussions with GTA now on the next steps, but most likely it will take probably 2 years, something like that.
To replace a legacy system?
Yes,
It's-
correct.
It's a question I've had obviously some teachers and local systems.
Yes.
Thank you.
Representative Prince.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's not so much a question, but it's just, and I've experienced it. I have a daughter who just finished her master's degree from Augusta University, and she could not get her certifications updated because they couldn't find Augusta University in the system. So this is well needed, long overdue, and I fully support it. Hopefully
Thank
just
you.
not run on.
We appreciate that.
So I
And
can
we-
keep peace at home.
And we hope she got certified in the end. Good.
All right, we actually have one more. Chairman Parsons.
Thanks, Chairman. I just want to make sure I know what I'm looking at here on this. We are looking at line item on page 4,
Correct.
1212, is that right?
Yes.
And there are two different, it references two different bills on here, HB 911 and HB 18. So what is the total that's going in for this program to do this?
It's 3.5 million.
How much?
3.5 million.
Okay, 3.5 million to do the upgrade or go to the new
Correct.
system.
Yes, to
Okay.
replace it.
Okay, I'm just kind of confused about that. What do you, I mean, briefly, what did those two, 911 and HB 18, what were they about? Or do you even know? I mean, they're referenced in this. The budget, okay, well,
Thank you.
you and I both remember that.
Yeah,
I won't ask the question again, and you'll know the answer if I do. Thank you.
thank you.
All right, I don't see any more questions at this time. We'll also let you get on with your weekend. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right, we are going to have Office of Commissioner of Insurance. Commissioner?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you all so much for allowing me to come and chat with you all this morning. Just to bring everybody into references, if you look at page 9 of your tracking sheet, and if I can point you all at on line 29.5.1. If I can just get a nod from you all when you get there, they'll continue. You know, Governor Kemp has recommended a $92 million increase to cover the state's portion of the reinsurance program, which offsets high-cost claims for Georgia's individual market. This reinsurance program has already shown incredible success and has reduced health care premiums an average of 12% across the state. In some areas, and especially in rural parts of our state, is lowered the rates down to 30%. So it's been a very effective program. Mr. Chairman asked me earlier, so how did we get to the round number of 92 million? This amount changes based on the amount of claims that are submitted every year. So it's going to be based on the claims every year. So it's going to fluctuate some, but it shouldn't fluctuate too much from this baseline. The reinsurance program has a net effect of also attracting additional carriers to parts of Georgia that have, in some places, that only had one carrier. We now have a total of, we've gone from 4 to 11 carriers across the state. So it's doing exactly what it was intended to do, is to attract carriers to come to all across Georgia in areas where we only had one single carrier. We are preemptively working with the Department of Audits to ensure that we are in compliance with all the federal guidelines governing this program. And that is really the big highlight. And of course, we have a number of accomplishments that thanks to this committee and the legislature giving us the tools to be able to modernize our agency so we can move at the speed that the state requires us to. And so I'm very appreciative for the money that you all allowed us to repair the damage that's been caused in our agency. And we are now one of those agencies that should not be one of your headaches. So I'm very proud that they've been able to, the amount of changes that we made in our agency in 3.5 years. But with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stand by for your questions.
Oh, thank you. Any questions? Representative Stoner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As it relates to the reissuance, and you're making the reference particularly rural Georgia, Mr. Commissioner, anything in sense specific geographically speaking as it relates to the points you were making about?
Yes, sir. We have the data, and what we're doing is we're analyzing the data, especially that's coming from as a result of claims. So what we do is we go into the claims database and we go to all the carriers and we do an analysis. The closer to the metro area, the less of a savings, because obviously there's a great deal of competition. But the farther away from metro areas where there's less competition, that's what we've encouraged. You know, we've been able to help companies to go into those areas so they can manage their risk.
Is there anything in particular, a certain part of the state that's, say, stands out, say Southwest Georgia? You know, I'm just asking if you had that data. I mean,
it is very new.
Yeah.
The data is
Yeah, I
basically
understand.
just about in a year, and I'm hesitant to make any
Understand.
drives because I honestly don't want to make a lot of far-reaching changes, and I don't want you all also to make changes
Right.
with limited amount of data. Now, our team is now going into the granular area. So what our hope is with the talent that we're bringing into our office is to get down to the county level, so then we can see trends. Because what I've noticed is we chase a lot of anecdotal evidence, and we throw a lot of money chasing anecdotes. And so what we're doing is we're getting into the data to show us where the data. One area that, for example, that we're working very closely with the states around us and insurance commissioners, because, for example, if you go to Dalton, how many of the Dalton residents, for example, are using Georgia facilities or using Tennessee facilities, or Tennessee residents coming and using? So we have to be very sensitive to, we're not making a lot of far-reaching decisions based. Columbus is another place. Augusta is another place where we see a lot of the, movement across our state lines. And so we're working with the commissioners of those states to make sure that we can get down to the granular level and understand. And a lot of it is, for example, providers. Doctors are operating one side of the state, but also servicing citizens on it. So the data is relatively new, and I think we only have about 1 year worth of data, and I'm just hesitant to really make a lot of far-reaching decisions based on just 1 year's worth of data.
Well, I'm glad y'all are doing that because you're right. We deal on too much anecdotal stuff up here at the Capitol.
And it costs a lot of money, sir. And the money's potentially going into places where we're not really addressing problems that are glaring at us. And so that is my biggest challenge, is going and attracting talent to be able to get that data from insurance companies and do that analysis. So when we come to you all and ask for additional funding, we're actually putting money against real problems.
Thank you, Commissioner.
We will go to my vice chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner King, we appreciate the job you're doing. You're doing a great job. You mentioned certain areas of the state that may only have one carrier. Is that still the case in areas of the state?
No, sir. We because of the reinsurance program, we're seeing 3, 4 carriers. I mean, we brought in 11 carriers across the state, so we don't have those. I think there's only one. Weston, do you know the one county? We have a county down, I think, in down on the Florida line, that is because they don't have a whole lot of facilities, but basically,
Right.
but it's a relatively small county that people go across the county line. So we don't have what we had a couple of years ago, where we had many parts of our state only had one carrier. Okay. And so this is exactly why this reinsurance program was designed to do, is to fix that problem.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to echo those who want to applaud the great job that you're doing, Commissioner. What is special fraud?
The special fraud, sir, is it's a funding source that the insurance industry gives to our department, and we are, you all are the pass-through. So it's billed to the insurance industry so we can combat fraud. Right now, we're number 2 in the nation when it comes to insurance fraud. If we were following Florida, and it is not a good place for us to be, because every bit of fraud costs every Georgia family between $400 and $700 per family of additional cost to insurance, because insurance companies will pass on those losses. And so our strategy to go after combating it is increasing the number of agents, they're law enforcement investigators who have access to the databases of insurance companies to go after fraud perpetrated by companies, by agents, and by individuals. And already turning around, we've increased by double the amount of prosecutions. And we don't all these agents are not just based in Atlanta, they're based across the state. So they have that relationship with the local district attorney, with the sheriff, with the police chief. Using those relationships that I've developed throughout the majority of my adult life is having these agents based in local communities so they get to know the local prosecutor and we can make a difference. These are hard cases. They're complicated cases to prosecute. And that's where we have to be in the local communities. And we already turned in the corner in many of them. And the people who are effective are some of the most vulnerable citizens in our communities. The folks that get, for example, when the storm came to Coweta County, we're seeing that right now in Spalding County. The fraudsters come and go after the most vulnerable, the senior citizens, and they'll get them to sign a contract to take the tree off their house. Well, our agents, that is what they're going after, is going and working with the local authorities to help people process their claims lawfully and protect them from these fraudsters, that most of them come out of state.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would have presumed that would have been under enforcement, but I see that line item is less than 10% of special fraud. What differentiates enforcement from special fraud?
Special fraud is the whole division, sir. That means analysts, investigators, people that handle HR, and folks that handle the database. There's a number of expertise that go into that whole division.
And enforcement is
law enforcement investigators, post-certified officers. Not only do we do the criminal side, we also do the administrative side. Yeah. We also have the administrative. We have lawyers that go and sanction agents and companies administratively, not in the criminal realm. So we have administrative authorities, and we also have criminal, Title 16 authorities.
Thank you, sir.
All right, Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. My question is about the enforcement too. I see it's not a whole lot of money in there. I mean, it's a lot of money, but in relation to everything else. And you mentioned you do have post-certified law enforcement in there. How many are actually in that division or whatever?
So in special fraud, there's currently 21 post-certified officers. Our enforcement division is our general counsel.
Can you actually, Chad, if you don't mind, I hate to interrupt you. Can you come to the mic?
Yeah, sorry about that. We have 20 agents assigned, and what we wanted to do is grow this division gradually. Because if you just go and hire, first I had to train them. These are general investigators that we brought in. A general law enforcement investigator at a sheriff's department, police department is not going to have the tools to be able to investigate financial fraud. This is like a policeman with a pocket protector and a computer. There's the skill sets to be able to get into financial audits. And so we spent probably more of a year now training these folks. And then they have to have access to the insurance companies' databases, which are obviously the insurance companies protect those databases very, very carefully.
Well, is that part grown? I mean, I don't recall. I mean, is that
it's grown? It's grown, and what I didn't want to give you all a sticker shock and come and ask for like for example, North Carolina has something like 50 or 60. I wanted to be able to grow this division based on that, a number of cases that were assigned, because when I took over this agency, there was not a good track record of we had a lot of agents, but they weren't doing a whole lot of prosecutions. And so what I'm doing is building this agency, and based on where the data takes us, number of cases, number of prosecutions, I'm giving you a sneak peek. I'm probably going to be coming next year and asking you for some more positions. But I want to be able to show you all that the caseload justifies those requests.
And I'm not, this isn't a criticism at all,
No.
because I don't, I mean, you know the job and I don't, but, I mean, just overall, every year, when I see the different agencies come in, and if we counted up the number of state police that we have in different agencies, I think we'd have, I feel sure we'd have more than we have in the state patrol. I mean, there's a lot, every agency now has their own post-certified state police. And
Nobody wants to work insurance fraud, sir. I will guarantee you that. It's hard, very tedious, hard work to be done. It requires a different skill set than GSP or GBI or any other agency.
I can understand that, but just if I may, do they really need to be, I can understand how they would need to be, have the background and the training and investigation, but do they really need to be personnel who carry firearms? I mean, is that really necessary in that?
Yes, sir,
I'm
they
just
are.
asking. I don't-
They put handcuffs on people who
do.
defraud some of our most vulnerable citizens, and some of these folks don't want to go to jail.
Well, I can understand that too.
I will tell you, the people that we arrest are not just involved in insurance fraud. They're involved in arson, murder for hire schemes. We want to be the partner of choice to every agency in the state of Georgia for having that level of expertise, because I was the chief of police at Doraville, so I had no time to send one of my investigators to go forensic auditing training. I want to be the partner of choice of any agency that picks up the phone and says, hey, I got this situation here. You wouldn't believe the number of murder for hire schemes that we've been called and says, can you come and do this analysis, because we think it's an insurance fraud scheme. When it comes to money, sir, people lose their minds sometimes. And so that is why we need it. Not all of our employees in that division are gun toters. We got administrative, we pursue a lot of our administrative authorities with non-law enforcement officers.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
All right, no worries, sir. Thank you.
I do not see any more questions this time. Commissioner, I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the questions. Every time I come to this hearing, I take a homework assignment, and we will do a better job, sir, describing what our folks do next time I come and ask you for some more people. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it very much. All right, we're going to move on to State Properties Commission and GBA. Committee, we're on page 13, section 36.
Good morning, Chairman, committee members. My name is Marty Smith. I'm the State Property Officer, and it's my privilege to serve. We have the oversight of 3 divisions: the Georgia Building Authority that manages all the assets for the state of Georgia, primarily here on Capitol Hill; State Properties Commission, where we do the acquisition and disposition for the state of Georgia and all the agencies across the state as well. And then, not least, but GSFIC, Georgia State Finance and Investment Commission, the construction division, where we build or remodel for the agencies across the state of Georgia and procure those jobs as well. Actively, we have 146 active projects right now going on with the state. I come from a background some county government, so I appreciate the opportunity of breaking down a budget and investment, but I have to take this time to thank the governor, each of you individually, and the General Assembly as a whole, of your past support and the financial commitment, because it is a commitment of helping our employees. As we try to become more efficient and more effective for the state of Georgia, those resources turn over a lot, and the commitment y'all have made, it's not a one-time, it's a one-time gift, it's a commitment, and I respect that. So I want to personally just say thank you from my position for that. Real quickly, I think we've only got 2 items. I'm going to call on Chief of Staff Gerald Pilgrim that's actually been involved in these 2 items right here to give a brief overview real quick.
Thank you, Mr. Smith, Chairman, committee members. We have 2 items. The first item is 36.2.1, and that is $35 million for basically for demolition of some state properties throughout the state. OPB came to our agency during the summer and with the Properties Commission, the Construction Division and Authority, and kind of asked us, you know, would there be something if we, you know, we have assets throughout the state where we've got buildings that are unoccupied, not utilized correctly, how to look at that and what that would be. It's quite extensive. We sent out a survey to all state agencies. Mr. Smith sent that out. We had quite a few came back to respond. We had 348 submissions on properties that were asked to, that if funds were available, that would be demolished. GBA and GISFIC and the Properties Commission looked at it not necessarily on the needs analysis of that particular project, but on a thing of the project, the amount of money it would cost to demolish the piece of property, and the return on investment. How many years would the state return their money back in? Because even though a building is occupied, like with this storage, or even unoccupied, there is still cost to the state. There's costs for some general, you know, we have insurance, we have liability coverages. So we took a very conservative estimate and assigned that if it was an occupied building, we had a number of $5 a foot. We had an unoccupied rate of $2 a foot. And we were basically came up with a return on investment of how many years it would be. So we were able to present that to OPB. I think it's been also shared to both the House and Senate, the budget offices. But basically the question is, we had $71 million worth of requests. And I think that, you know, really we did not look at it. So if the $35 million represents half that amount, that if it was funded to see how it would go into that, make sure we're getting a return, that would cover everything, basically 10 years, that gets a return on investment in 10 years and sooner. So if it's approved. So that's where those numbers came from, and 35 million, and where we kind of looked at that. So that was on that issue. The other issue was last year, the General Assembly and this committee in particular approved $600 million for transforming prisons. And that was something that the Building Authority has been involved with in cooperation with corrections. One of the assignments that we were given, 2 assignments with that, we were assigned that we need to look at building a 3,000 bed facility. We are in the process. We have just done a needs assessment with the Department of Corrections for that location of what a 3,000 bed facility would need. We will go into procurement on that probably starting in February, March, to have it under contract by April, and hopefully once we get some drawings, have some land being cleared once we establish the location of that by the fourth quarter of this year, so we can start the process on a brand new facility. We were also tasked with, there was a location in McRae, Georgia that was owned by Core Civic. It was a private prison. They lost the federal contract. They had actually offered to the state for $200 million to purchase that location. We were assigned with going in, looking at, and trying to get it converted from currently a men's federal prison to a women's state prison. We went with that. We were able to negotiate with the owner of the property. We were able to do the final purchase price of the land and everything. It was $130 million. Then on top of that, then we were looking at doing some renovations to the project. Well, we are doing the renovations because our goal is to have it open by May of this year. So the corrections can start moving the women's facility, get it open, get a lot safer. We've got a lot of renovations for that, the new furniture, there'll be high-tech security. It will have all the drone protection that you've heard about corrections. They have all the latest assets for that to get that facility. So with that being said, we feel like there will be some savings from the $200 million that we kind of had allocated for that. But as we were looking at prisons with corrections and with the Office of Planning and Budget, and I think, and with both, and quite frankly, with the committees, with the offices of the House and Senate offices, corrections and Department of Juvenile Justice have large facilities, quite a few facilities that are in some considerable disrepair that need to have some investments in there. I think corrections has done a good job addressing it as they can, But it's one of the things as you look at, there's been money to repair some roofs as they've needed it, but not money there that just has been able to look at. Let's look at every place that we lock people up, that we have as a correctional facility in the state. And let's look at each one. Let's come up with a plan so we can present to the General Assembly and say, we're working off a plan. When they ask you for $50 million, $20 million, $100 million, they can reference it on a page. They've got a detailed analysis for that, and we can give the backup that we're making sure we want good money after good projects instead of, just throwing to repair things. And that way y'all can make some hard decisions that if facilities do need to be shuttered, or facilities need to be major renovations, or we need to look at other stuff, that y'all at least have some data and not some anecdotal stuff. So when we did that, we also know DJJ, that we do a lot of projects for them in construction. They have the same issues. We want to look at that. One of the things that we were asking is take some of the potential savings, from the $200 million, and really assess our correctional facilities, both DJJ and corrections, and be able to give a document. And the goal is to have this project completed by September 1 of this year. So funds are available. Funds are already in our accounts. So we're just asking for y'all to give kind of the authority to go ahead and start this project and work in cooperation. Again, we've had a great partnership with corrections on this and with DJJ. They're excited about this potential, and like I said, we're also pretty excited about where we are on the projects for that. So with that, we'll turn over to questions for y'all.
Well, thank you for that. We'll start with Representative Yurda.
Yes, sir.
Good morning.
Good morning,
Thank
sir.
you, Mr. Chairman. Are these properties that need demolition, are they concentrated in any one area of
There are a lot of campuses. There's a lot of correctional type facilities in there. They're pretty much throughout the state. Not a lot in, I would say there's very few in the metro Atlanta area, but throughout. And be glad, I'll make sure the committee, if you share this with you, because we have it by county and by city. So glad to let you look at all these.
Okay.
So you can kind of see this, so you would have that. So.
All right. Are there any that are freestanding that there may be the possibility that the property may be sold?
There is potential on some of those, and that was one of the things where the conversation really stemmed out of that from OPB, of being able to, that was one of the things they wanted us to look at on the return on investment, if we could sell it. It was kind of limited on those when we looked at it, but I think there is some potential. There's also some potential for redevelopment, and I think that's where the biggest, I think very few would be ones for sale, but there's a lot of potential for redevelopment of campuses.
Right.
So there's some, really some potential, even additional savings and return on investment from that area.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll add to that before we move on. I think the $5 amount for occupied and $2 amount for occupied is definitely a conservative number, so I appreciate that, that angle. Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to mention something here, and I guess this is anecdotal, really. I'm not necessarily advocating for this, but I had made a mental note one time that if I ever had the opportunity to say something about it, I would. I was down in Bainbridge about 2 years ago, year and a half ago, something like that. There's a huge solar farm down there that a subsidiary or a contractor of Southern Company has. And right over next to that, since I was down there, there's a correctional facility. It's the Bainbridge RSAT, I think they call it. They have programs. It's a program for I think originally that building was actually a mental health facility, but it's now mental and substance abuse. They have mostly younger people that come in there for a period of time. And here again, I'm not advocating for this because you all are the ones that are the experts on this. You may know, but I did notice when I was there, at that facility in Bainbridge, there's a rather, looks like a good-looking building that's a chapel, or used for church services. That's what it had been used for, but they're not using it because of some problems with the building. Now, it may be the roof, it may be something very expensive, I don't know, but I just saw that building and I thought, well, that looks like it. I mean, here again, no way inspected the building. I have no idea. It looked like, just to look at it, the bones were good, and it looked like a nice facility for a chapel or church services, but that's not where they're having their services. And I just thought I would mention that if I ever had the opportunity, and so forgive me for that. Separate from the budget itself, it is a budget issue, of course, but just wanted to mention that. That's at the Bainbridge RSAT down in Bainbridge, Georgia.
Chairman, we'll definitely make that, and before anything was demolished, we would do a survey to make sure, because that is one of the things is, you know, if a building can be repurposed, and that's one of the things that we've been working with a lot of agencies also. We've worked pretty well with GVRA on some requests that they had this year with Warm Springs to make sure that, you know, y'all are looking at, and we're actually looking at if the building is be able to be salvaged and be able to be repurposed for another thing. So that's definitely one. Thank you for letting us know about that, because again, we have not gone and looked at all these. We really concentrate on the kind of the operating buildings, so we don't really the agencies kind of take care of the other ones, but we'll definitely make sure we make a trip down. I always enjoyed going down to Bainbridge anyway.
That's a great drive down there. It really is. But not a criticism at all. And it may be that there's the best reason in the world. It may be that building could never be used again for anything. But I just made a mental note that I would mention that if I ever had the chance.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Stoner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I might have missed it, but you were talking about the $200 million that you had received and talking about what y'all had done in the sense that when you were negotiating, I believe, on in a sense, the private prison for federal. What exactly was, what you were appropriated, but I understand obviously you didn't pay $200 million, or you're not going to pay $200 million. So what was the difference in the sense?
We paid, it was $200 million was what their asking price was for the property. We paid, ended up with $130 million.
So what I'm hearing is you had a savings of $70 million in a sense in comparison.
And then we're going to put just around 40, right at 40. We're not really complete on some of the security issues, but it's going to be roughly around $40 million. So we think there should be close to about a $30 million delta between the two. Our intention was originally to just hold everything over into since we're going to be building a new prison and with construction costs and everything like that but that $8.2 million we felt was kind of vital to being able to get y'all admission that, this was there, that we can start, as we're in the construction process for that. And these requests come to y'all quite frequently, that we think that this would be a major need.
And I'll make sure that maybe I misunderstood. So was some of that money being, as I was reading on 36.2.2, is that you're utilizing some of those existing funds to do this analysis or this assessment? Is that also?
I apologize. Yes, sir. I was not clear. That was that's from basically taken from the $30 million that we have thing. We would take $8 million of that from there. So I apologize for not being clear on that.
I thought I understood that, but I didn't want to make sure what the
yes, sir.
amount
We're just reallocating that and getting y'all's permission to do that.
And real quickly, and I know y'all were talking about in the sense of there may be properties you can redevelop, there may be properties you might sell. And I assume one of the issues when we're looking at selling a piece of property is the environmental issues.
Yes, sir.
Considering some ages of these properties and probably what they were used for, and let's just say, we didn't know better what we were doing. I've dealt in redevelopment. I've dealt with having to take down buildings with asbestos, things like that, and I expect some of these buildings are old enough and those issues. That's a sec that comes into your thing, because you're not going to put something on the market that you haven't cleaned up, I guess, is my assumption.
Yes, sir. So the goal would be to get this land where the demolition would have the environmental concerns.
Right.
Environmental concerns for the building. We have not looked at if we get an investigation, and I think I've addressed with stuff that people have done over the years and something that may have been buried someplace that we're not aware of. But we took environmental concerns into consideration.
Right.
We were coming with that. So yes, we would have the buildings would be abated, raised. Then that way we're turning over a clean piece of property that could be redeveloped or reused.
Right. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right. I think we're out of questions for today.
Thank you all for y'all's
I
time.
appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
All right. We're going to move on to Department of Revenue, page 14, section 42.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For those haven't met yet, my name is Frank O'Connell, and I'm happy to be serving as your interim state revenue commissioner. And I'm joined today by three other folks from the department. Francis Watson is our assistant deputy commissioner for external operations. Ken Nash is our chief financial officer. And I think a number of you know Austin Gibbons, who's our director of external affairs and communications. The Department of Revenue seeks to be a customer-friendly, customer-facing, solutions-friendly department, and we seek to fairly and impartially enforce tax, alcohol, and motor vehicle laws that impact every Georgian. Now, excuse me, you'll find our budget items in section 42 of your tracking sheet on pages 14 and 15. Line 42.1 covers departmental administration. 42.2, the forest land protection grants, which are the department's responsibility under Georgia law. 42.3 is the homeowner tax relief grants that are a key element of the governor's budget recommendation. And our local government services team, which is under the leadership of Francis Watson, is working with OPB to develop guidance for local elected officials and provide Q&A sheets to assist when you receive constituent calls. That guidance is forthcoming shortly. I just reviewed it yesterday, so it's very nearly ready. Line 42.4 covers industry regulation activities that are also our responsibility under Georgia law, including the regulation of alcohol and tobacco. 42.5 supports our local government services team as they work on issues such as the local option sales tax collections and property tax administration. 42.6 covers retirement and payroll withholding for local tax officials. 42.7 covers motor vehicle registration and titling. And over the last several years, our motor vehicle division has been modernizing their systems to keep up with the ever-changing landscape of technology. 42.8 supports the Office of Special Investigations at Department of Revenue as they investigate criminal matters related to our state laws for alcohol, taxes, and motor vehicles. 42.9 covers our tax compliance unit. That unit supports our 11 regional offices and works with taxpayers to get them in compliance through installment agreements and other programs offered by the department. Now moving to page 15, lines 42.10 and 11 support our tax policy and taxpayer services units, and these are the units in charge of our call center, the implementation of tax credits and exemptions, and the collection of taxes for the state of Georgia. Let me mention one often talked about item for the department, and that's the special tax refund that the department did for the first time last year. Most refunds were out the door by July, and we were able to use our taxpayer services division to respond to constituent questions. Now, a number of states had special refunds. Not all of them went as smoothly as ours did. We're proud of that. Some states asked us for advice on how we did ours. So it's rewarding to be seen as being efficient in any area. Now, just as we did last year, we'll work with the governor's office and other stakeholders regarding the authorization and implementation of the tax refund this year. And we'll keep the public, press, and legislators informed as information becomes available. Let me thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your work, and the members of the committee, your work on this important committee. The department fully supports the governor's budget recommendations, and we stand ready to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Commissioner. I want to open with, I applaud the governor's efforts to kind of ease the burden of our Georgia property taxes as we've kind of continued to ratchet those up. Do you foresee your department being able to handle that, or need any additional staff to process that, or you feel like where you guys are at is sufficient to process that?
I believe we have sufficient resources to process it. There was a similar grant in 2009, and we have better systems than we had back then, so we will be able to process that program.
And then I have one additional question. The $39 million in forest land protection grants, is that number keeping up with the applications the state's receiving for those?
I'm going to defer to my CFO, Ken Nash, who's here, but we have distributed $18 million so far this fiscal year, and by the end of the month, we'll have distributed $23.3 million. But let me ask my CFO if he could respond to that question. Ken?
Yes, we are keeping up that appropriation.
All right. Thank you. Representative Prince.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I just want to commend you for stepping up as the interim and keeping the ship rolling forward. As the chairman just mentioned, some tax, hopefully rebates coming out, and you guys are going to be very, very busy, so we look forward to your leadership, and please let us know what we can do to help you.
Thank you very much, sir. I appreciate that. I've been at the department for 19 and a half years, generally flying under the radar, so it's a different feeling. But I was fortunate to work under Commissioner Crittenden for the last 17 months as her deputy commissioner, and that's helped tremendously. And of course, as interim, you don't rock the boat. I'm continuing her programs. So,
Well, I'll echo that too. I appreciate your stepping in. I think I don't see any more questions right now, so we appreciate your time.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we are going to move on to the Secretary of State, page 16, section 43.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members.
Good morning.
I'm Gabriel Sterling. I'm the COO CFO representing Secretary Raffensperger here today to go over the amended 23 budget. So we'll start us on page 63 of your book for the lines, and we can start with our corporations division, which, as y'all know, requires.
Ours is page 16 up here,
Oh,
guys.
okay.
No problem.
I got 63 on mine, so I apologize.
No problem.
Section 43. Let me start with 43.1. I will say it does say House Budget Research Office on the bottom of 63, what they gave me, so I'm not losing my mind.
No problem.
I can read numbers. On the corporations division, this will be the fourth year in a row where we've required 0 state dollars. We are 100% run on the expedite fees paid by people who file and want to file quickly. And you saw in the secretary's presentation that he was asking for capital expenditure, and we are agnostic if that is an amended 23 or a FY 24 of a $2.8 million request to basically replace our current corporation system, which is getting a little long in the tooth now. It's over 8 years old. And you'll be getting stuff from your constituents occasionally. Things are a little slower, not as good. Still runs pretty well. I mean, we still processed 1.46 million corporate filings last year under the system. But we'd rather stay ahead of the issues than let them catch up to us, then we have to be playing a game of catch up. So that is in there because, as I said, we operate 100% on our expedite fees, which goes straight to our operations. So trying to fund a $2.8 million capital project is not really available in the dollars that we get from what we function on. The next section is 43.2, and you'll see in there a section of 43.2.1 where in the governor's budget they're requesting that They take 2 of our existing elections positions and use them in support of the state election board. As you all know, in SB 202, there's a different chairman now from the Secretary of State's office. Traditionally, the Secretary of State's office has supported the SEB. But in this case, they need some independent help that would be working through our office as like an administratively attached agency. In doing so, though, they're taking our 30 people that we have running elections in this state and cutting it to 28. That's a 7% reduction in force. And to give you a comparison of a similar sized state, North Carolina has a state elections system that runs with 63 employees. I love efficiency. We do a good job, but we're very tight. So moving 2 people out is difficult. I've shared with Mr. Hartman on your staff the costs of the 2 positions that are coming over and would ask they would be replaced. And that's one position is $52,000 of salary, but with the burden, as you all know, it's a little high in our state, around 68%, so it would be $88,176. The second employee is a $55,000 employee. With the burden is $93,264. We would like to see those replaced. And we've now had 2 successful elections in a row with the investments that y'all allowed us to do coming out of HB 316 with the bond money. We were given $150 million. We purchased an entire system for every county and asked them to say, what do you want? You want any extra equipment? We fulfilled every equipment request of every single county, including them buying stuff ahead for growth. And we've been a very good steward of the tax dollars on this to the point where we were able to work with the legislature, and we thank you again for redirecting bond money to replace our voter registration system, which we are launching on February 6th. A lot of our team is in training right now on that. And then another $4 million redirection of that same bond money to replace our licensing software, which I'll go into in a moment. In the investigations division, there was a weird anomaly that we all had to deal with. In the last budget, y'all saw fit to meet our request of 23 replacement vehicles that had met the DOAS life cycle, basically. Over 100,000 miles, cost more to keep on the road through repairs. Unfortunately, with the 40-year high inflation, we were only able to afford 17 with the money that y'all gave to us. So we still have the same vehicles we need to replace, so we're asking you to put 6 more in. And the cost on those vehicles, I believe, I'm hoping it's come down, but the ones we purchased was $19,755 because they stopped selling the Ford Fusions, which we had been using. We moved to, and now I'm blanking on what we got. I think it's a Kia. So we would like to see those put back in if we could. Office Administration, there are no program changes. The licensing board, as I mentioned, we are in the middle of replacing that with the bond money that y'all gave. We will begin rolling that out in the spring and with a new system for licensing, which will hopefully make things a lot better for everybody, and then be ending the rollout by trade in the fall. On the securities, finally, there's no changes requested there. But I do want to point out that corporations gets no money from the state and brings to the state $106 million. The Professional Licensing Board runs on $8.5 million of state money and brings a little over $22 million, and Securities runs on $1.1 million and brings in a little under $13 million. So we are not a cost center. We produce dollars for the state. So we are asking for these small investments to allow us to continue to do that. So with that, I will take any questions y'all might have.
All right, thank you. We'll start with Representative Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I do, too, want to start off by applauding the job that you're doing. Obviously, the citizens of this state have confidence in what you're doing, and if there's ever a department that needs to have confidence, it is yours. You mentioned there was a state that has 63 employees. What is that state doing that we are not?
To make it apples to apples, they also have Mr. Amati's section of the campaign finance in theirs. I don't know. They'd have more investigators. They divide it separately, where there are investigators directly inside their units, whereas ours are shared in the investigations unit, which again allows for us to be. We can force scale up at the time we need to, but then we force scale back on the other things that we investigate, which would be having to do with licenses, auto parts, nurses, all those kind of things. And we have in the upcoming budget, we're requesting for more investigators. But again, just because people have more personnel doesn't mean they're doing it better. I think we are leading the nation in executing elections. You're right, we have seen confidence increased, especially since the 2020 with the 2022 outcomes. And we work diligently with the counties on that because they are the ones who actually run the elections. I think we have a good team. My point is losing 2 members of a really lean team can have an impact, and we don't want to see that impacted as we go into the presidential election because, again, Georgia will be ground zero because everybody thinks they can win it. Everybody will be here. Everybody's going to sue us. So we want to do everything we can to make sure we can get away from having to lose anything. And so far, with the resources the state has given us, we've successfully defended everything from the 2018 election. We have successfully defended everything from the 2020 election. We've successfully defended SB 202 thus far. So we feel like if we can keep the proper resources in place, we can continue to do so and keep that confidence level up, as you pointed out, Representative Mitchell.
Let me, if I may, Mr. Chair, let me ask you about the wet signature on absentee ballots. Does it save the state any money by requiring the actual signature as opposed to just doing it online? I'm just thinking about the burden it puts on senior citizens and those who don't have printers or access to printers without going to a retailer and the like.
And you're talking about specifically for the application process.
Right.
There's 2 reasons for that. And again, we simply implement the law that is passed by the legislature and signed by the governor. We have already built out that system in our new Jarvis that we've done. So it would have no fiscal impact one way or the other at this point. We have taken into account. But one of the things that was, I think the rationale behind some of that was there was a concern that if you went by driver's license alone, which is a good identifier, that a third party could be on the phone and do it for you without you having to do any actions. What we saw in 2018 was a lot of that going on. So this was a way to have an extra security guard or a security rail around that. And I believe that's the intention behind it, but we have it put in place. And what we saw was, when you compare apples to apples, 2020 was an anomaly. We had special rules. We were in the middle of a COVID pandemic. What we saw in 2022 versus 2018, which was a gubernatorial election versus a gubernatorial election. No COVID. We're living with COVID and everybody's figured it out. We saw an increase in applications. We saw an increase in usage. We saw an increase in acceptance. So the system actually saw increased usage with the online wet signature thing than we had in the previous, which was a wet signature they had to do regardless. So when you compare apples to apples, we are actually in a better position now to help those seniors and people who had to physically get those applications before anyway and mail them in. So I think we've actually moved forward from where we had been if you compare apples to apples.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we'll go with Chairman Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman. I wanted to ask you, and I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know if you are or not. I don't remember.
Lord, no.
Okay. All right. So
I leave that to those guys.
I wouldn't understand much of the proceedings if you told me, but I'm not asking you. But all I'm wondering is, in the budget hearings we just had, Tricia Pradmore, the chairman of the Public Service Commission, and I'm not sure if it's reflected in the amended or the upcoming budget, but she had referenced an amount of money. It was a pretty good amount of money that's being charged to the PSC, but it's a suit that the Secretary of State's office is involved in regarding the elections for the PSC members. I'm just wondering who the PSC is being charged because it refers it's their office that will be affected, or that agency that will be affected. But who are the actual parties involved in that suit? I'm just wondering how that.
We are a named party, and I'm not a lawyer, so I'm going to give you my layman's understanding of it. Okay. And right now, our general counsel around Germany moved on about 6 days ago. That's so I don't have a good answer for you right now, but I can basically tell you this. Whenever it comes to any elections, because our office, Secretary Raffensperger, is the state elections officer, he will always be named in any suit having to do with redistricting, any election, even though our office has literally nothing to do with redistricting other than helping counties implement it. So that is why we are a named party to that suit. We are kept informed of it, but the PSC is running that suit with a special assistant attorney general through the attorney general's office, and that is how that is run.
Okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
In fear of this going somewhere else, let's keep this to budgetary budgetary commentary.
Well, it
right?
is budgetary.
If yes, and I allowed the Representative Mitchell also with the question on if it was saving money for the wet signatures, but all right, thank you. We'll go to Representative Stoner.
And keeping with that, this is actually budgetary. So just want to go back, Gabe, to the when you were talking about the two positions and
Yes, sir.
you were throwing the numbers out. So with the burden included, it's roughly 181,000. You had, I think you said 88,000 for one.
Give or take, yeah. 88 and
I mean, I'm not
93,
asking,
yeah.
but that's basically 181,000 or so.
Yes, sir.
For us to replace that, including the burden. And then, is it, I heard you correctly say, or I thought I heard you say that, you know, you're trying to get 23 new vehicles? You only got 17, so you came up 6 short, right?
Yes, sir.
So you're needing, roughly, what do you think that's gonna cost now that you've been out in the market?
A little less than 120,000. It's 19,755 times
Yeah.
6, whatever that is. I went
Right.
to Georgia. I can't do it in my head.
Okay. So, okay, I got you. So basically, just between the two, yeah, what you're asking for is basically about $300,000.
That seems about correct.
Roughly. I mean, I'm not going to hold you that, but I'm just trying to get it in my head and everything else. And I assume, are those Kias built in LaGrange as you're going to be purchasing?
I would certainly
I'm
hope so,
just-
sir.
I'm just, all right, thank you.
We believe in supporting our good corporate citizens. And there was one other item in the letter that we sent you, Chairman Wiedauer and Chairman Hatchett, of $250,000. There was a specific thing in SB 202 to put together a ballot image library. And it sounds simple, but it's not. We have about $250,000 of that. We are agnostic if that goes in amended 23 or FY 24, but it's required in the law. And the reason it's not as easy as it might seem, when people put their ballot and find out they can look for it later, they'll put stars in the corner. They'll do little things to say, that's my ballot. But what they can do with that then is they can go to a bad actor and say, pay me my $20 for my vote that I gave you. So we have to work on a way to be able to hide those kind of images off of those ballots and still have them be accessible. Secondarily, you have to worry about the situations where bad actors might take the images and alter them themselves and say, look, we have found fraud. So we're trying to get ahead of the issues that come from both sides of the aisle of trying to make claims about things. So it's not as easy as, hey, let's just throw scans up on the internet and let people look. We have to have them coded, serialized, understand where they are. So it's not this as easy as here's some pictures to look at. So that's the reason for the cost of $250,000.
All right, I see no more questions. I appreciate your time this morning.
We thank you all for your time. And there's one other thing with our attached agency that you're going to hear from soon. We do definitely support the extra money in the governor's budget for the OSA hearings, as those have been increased in cost. And the Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission has been trying to do their job with one arm behind their back for a little while. So you're going to hear from Mr. Turnage in a few minutes, and he needs y'all's help too. So, thank y'all.
Which is a great segue to Mr. Turnage. So, Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission. Good morning. I'll start with, I do appreciate your efforts over the last, 18, 24 months. I know we spoke extensively last year as you were trying to get these licenses out and the assistance or need of many of our Georgia citizens for this medical cannabis. So appreciate those efforts, and thank you again for joining us this morning.
Thank you so much, Chairman Wiedauer and members. Also appreciate the support from the Secretary's office and from your staff also to prepare for today. We do have one item. It's on page 16 of 18, I believe, in your copy, and the section is 47.3. You'll see the Georgia Access.
43.7.
43.7, sorry about that. 43.7, thank you. It's the Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission. We are an attached agency, as Deputy Secretary previously stated. Just to clarify, if you are not familiar with attached agencies, that relationship means that the Secretary's office provides the Commission with 3 functions, and that is budget, procurement, and human resources. Beyond those 3 support items, we do not receive support from the Secretary's office, and they're not obligated to provide that. To that end, we do have to prepare our own budget. They present that on our behalf because of being required to provide that support. The item that you see that's listed there is additional funding for amended fiscal year 23. And you can see that it is to cover some expenses associated with hearings that were conducted by the Office of State Administrative Hearings. If I could, Mr. Chair, just have a couple of moments to provide a little bit of background on what that expenditure is about and why we need those funding items. So the licensing process that you referenced earlier, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the kind words. It's been an interesting journey, and we've been working hard to get those licenses issued. Certainly pleased to report that of the 6 licenses that the Commission has the statutory authority to issue, we have issued 2 of those, both of which are Class 1 production licenses, and those were issued on September the 21st of last year, and those licensees are up and beginning their operations. So we're really excited about that progress here in Georgia. One of our licensees, Botanical Sciences LLC, is located in Tattnall County, that's Glenville, Georgia. The other production facility is Trueleaf, Georgia, and they are located in Cook County, that's Adel, Georgia. So a little bit of south central and in southeast Georgia on those 2 production facilities. Also of note, the Commission did conduct a rules hearing this week with proposed rules, and the Commission intends to vote to adopt those at a public meeting on the 25th. That'll be next Wednesday, and relevant rules to our production facilities. Leading up to issuing those production licenses, the process that the Commission is required by law to go through in order to award that license contract is a RFP. That's the style that the Georgia's Hope Act requires the Commission to follow in order to evaluate and ultimately award those license contracts. So that process was conducted. Part of the due process that is built into that RFP is consistent with the styling of any RFP that the Department of Administrative Services would conduct, and that's a requirement by law. Ours has to follow that same process. So the applicants in any DOS contract award have the due process right built into the RFP to protest the awards of any contract. And since these licenses are treated as a contract by the language of the law, we were required to conduct a post-award protest process. The Commission did conduct pre-hearings for all of the protesters. We had, at the beginning of the process, we had 69 applicants. Again, the law only allows us to award 6. And so I think you can surmise that there are a lot more unhappy parties than happy parties in that equation. There were a number of entities that protested in that process, and we conducted pre-hearings for those. But ultimately, one of the items that we had submitted and requested funding for in our 23 budget submission was funding for a hearing officer. And we certainly wanted that to be conducted by an administrative law judge in a proper forum for very large entities in a competitive environment to have an opportunity for an unbiased party to hear that, as opposed to commission members or commission employee presiding over those hearings. Ultimately, we did receive some emergency funding in the previous fiscal year from Governor Kemp. Certainly appreciate those efforts. That was in the previous fiscal year. Our protest proceedings continued on into the current fiscal year. And so the funding that you see in that line item is actually to cover hearing costs that are associated with that same protest process that were conducted in the current fiscal year. So our projections are that we'll be in excess of $115,000 over budget. Again, we did request $1.2 million in our budget submission. We were funded at $908,000. And so this makes our budget for amended fiscal year 23 whole again to cover those administrative hearing costs. And certainly want to extend a thank you to Judge Malahy and the Office of State Administrative Hearings and Judge Howells that presided over that for their excellent work in that process. And we certainly appreciate the opportunity to route that to a venue that we think is proper for those hearings. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll certainly defer to any questions that you have, and that's the specifics and a little bit of history about what that funding will be used for.
Thank you for that. We'll open up Representative Mitchell.
Once again, good to see you, and I tell you, you do have a difficult job. I think when we put this legislation together and decided that we were going to pick winners and losers by only giving 6 licenses, I thought that this was going to be a tough road ahead of us. Your budget includes a hearing for those protesters. What is the outcome of the protest? Let's assume you have a protest hearing. We spend the money to do that, and we find that a particular protester's argument is valid. We only say you can have 6 licenses. Do you then remove one of the applicants who have been granted?
Appreciate the question, Representative. So the protest procedures actually outline what the options are should the hearing officer make a determination that something didn't go according to the procedures in the evaluation process. There are actually multiple remedies or options that the hearing officer can recommend if that finding was made. In this case, the hearings were all conducted, and Judge Howes ruled in favor of the Commission's evaluation results as the final decisions for all of the protests that were conducted. However, should that ruling have gone in a different direction, hypothetically, some other options would follow the same options that you would see in any RFP, which could be a recommendation for a review, it could be a recommendation for a do-over, it could be a recommendation for a different award. So there are a lot of options that are built into that process.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to talking to you about fiscal year 24. As the Deputy Secretary mentioned, we're in need, so I hope I can come back and talk to you about that again in the near future. Thank you.
I'm sure we'll be hearing from you very soon.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Well, before we adjourn, I know several of us have been on the committee for a couple of years now. For those of you that are new to the committee, I'll offer this up. What I really appreciate about this subcommittee, it may not be the sexiest part of the budget, but when you start thinking about constituent services and the things that you can do for your folks back home, you know, these agencies are often the agencies that your constituents have issues with or things that they need to work through. And I just encourage you guys to get to know these commissioners, these executive directors of each of these departments, because these are the people that are really going to be able to make you a more effective legislator when you're trying to help your folks back home. So appreciate your service on this committee. Appreciate everyone's time this morning, and we will stand adjourned.